Hello, hope you're having a wonderful time in our BEOI training course. I'm going to share a screen with you and go over week three. Can you believe it? So, week three will open tomorrow, which is Wednesday morning. So, I want to prepare this for you in case you're ahead of your own schedule, that you can go ahead and take a look at week three. And actually, why does this look like it's not week three? Let me go ahead and check to make sure I'm not doing something weird. That happens. Oh, there we go. And so that way you can take a look, and I think it will help you plan out your week. Especially if you have spots open over the weekend, you can go ahead and jump in and participate. So this is a recorded session. You probably realize by now that we don't have any live Zoom sessions. We still will have the virtual office hours, the Zoom office hours, 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And so our last one will be during week four. For those of you who are not teaching or scheduled to teach in the spring, you are encouraged to use week five if you need it. We won't have office hours during that week. Our last office hour will be Wednesday of the fourth week of class. So just a heads up there. All right, continue to use the Canvas inbox to reach out to me. So far, that's going really well. And we're going to focus a little bit on engagement objectives and outcomes. So let me go ahead and make sure that you have the full screen of this. Da-da-dum. Here we go. All right, I just have to move some things around on my screen and we will continue. So this is our meeting agenda for this recorded meeting. We're going to take a look at what's due during week four and support reminder. Also take a look at student engagement by design. So we try to set that up as we create our courses. Again, anticipating what students might need, right? And what we really want is for them all to feel the presence of the instructor, our presence, and also their peers. We're going to take a look at objectives and outcomes, BEOI support, and then some reminders. Well, it's tough with the BEOI support because everyone's on holiday right now, right? And so folks don't really get back until maybe the fourth week of our BEOI when we're wrapping up. So please reach out to me by using the Canvas inbox if you have any questions. We'll also take a look at some reminders. All right, review of assignments. What is due? We have, let me move this out of the way. We have a couple of reminder Sundays. We have on January 12th, the completion of your introductory module, design and build. That means it's all built out. All the hyperlinks are in there. You don't have any more bare links. Lists contain more than one bullet or more than one item. Any table you have has to be also accessible. That means you need to have a caption for the table. You need to have and identify the header row. Tables, uh, just you think twice before you use a table. I mean, they can be made accessible. It's just a little tougher. If something can be made into a list, that might be a better choice, design choice. Also, due Wednesday, January 15th, we have our peer replies where you're going to share your introductory orientation module. And then you need to reply to two of your peers. We have also a mid-course survey, so a little bit of reflection there. And then we want to create presence. And so you have a quiz on that. On Sunday, January 19th, we will have the initial post of sharing your student-to-student interaction activities and building your learning content, creating learning objectives and outcomes. So that's going to be it's kind of the meat of your course there. Whenever you hear the term RSI, regular substantive interaction, it, for the most part, is focused on sort of the discussions, the ways that students reach out to us, that we reach out to them. And we need to just make sure that they know what to expect, right? Use of announcements, use of the Canvas inbox, and such. We will just, this is something we've been trying to let you know that setting Canvas and notifications really helps. that there is campus support, but it's very light right now again because a lot of the support is by faculty who also do what I do. Some are staff, so they might already be back maybe next week. Also, your assignment tracker, if that helps, you can also go to the grade book and just check all of the assignments there. You will see a couple of things, the score that you received and the score um, attainable, if you will. Then you will also see comments. If you click on the rubric, you will find the rubric criteria and maybe additional comments in there. So please really take a look at that. In particular, if you're missing points, take a look. That's why I'm shy to give a perfect score if there's something not quite right. So you might see a score of maybe 1.9 instead of 2 for a criteria, but that's really to catch your attention. That there's something there that's not quite the way it should be. Sometimes it's this, the overlooking of a hyperlink, a bare link that needs to have um, a descriptive link. And also the office hours, we're going to continue to have those. So Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. And then how to troubleshoot. If you ever find a page that's not acting right, check you're using Chrome as your browser and maybe close it all out and then restart it. And sometimes that works. Student engagement by design. Do we ever decide, okay, well, I think I need to include a discussion here? Yes, we do. Sometimes we might reach the midpoint. We might feel or get some feedback from students that they feel that they're not interacting with their peers enough. And you might decide to create around week 9 additional discussions, right? Typically, one discussion per week does it, right? Fills that sort of need to interact with other folks. Um, you can also create assignments that are peer reviewed. I only have one in my entire course because they are a little bit more of a challenge to administer and manage, right? But you can create that. Mine is a good draft. So I have all students submit their good draft of their final research paper, and then they get to peer review two. So they get to take a look at two good drafts from their peers, give feedback by using the rubric, the same rubric they're going to have to use. And then that just gives them all sorts of feedback and interaction. Also, we need to make sure that we tell students in the syllabus where and how to expect that, even if we include that same information in a course communication plan or course communication guidelines or page, right? So just making sure that that's clear. Um, but yes, we don't want students to hide in the back of the room, right? We want to make sure that they do feel engaged in the course, particularly if it's a fully online asynchronous course, meaning there aren't any Zoom meetings. So let's see here. More contact. Means of achieving substantive contact include, but are not limited to, follow-up questions on the discussion board to assist students in reaching a higher learning potential, timely personalized feedback on assignments, discussions, and or quizzes that guide students to further knowledge and skills. Some students do need a video feedback. I do that for some of the critical analysis, these research essays, when I realize that some of the formatting or maybe the concept is not quite there. If I get a document with a list or bullets, then I'm like, okay, they don't get this. Is supposed to be a research essay. So then I will create a video walking them through the criteria, and walking them through the rubric. So, but I can't do that for all of my students, right? So this becomes apparent to me around week 3. And then there are, a couple from each class, maybe two, who really need that sort of recorded video walkthrough. But most students already have a video walkthrough of some sort already embedded within the instructions, right, or the learning contact. Um, so what else? We are going to later on create learning content that is curated, meaning that you borrowed it from somewhere else. It might be YouTube that's properly captioned. No auto-generated captions because those are not properly captioned. Or it might be a PowerPoint that you got from your publisher that you just kind of tweaked a little bit to make sure that it represents what you're trying to teach your students. So those would be curated, but you might create your own. You might create your own videos, create your own PowerPoints. I use Prezi. So you can also have your own created content. Let's see, synchronous online meetings and chats that further explore course materials and answer students' questions. Those really help. The announcements, if you decide that you're going to create synchronous online meetings that are not in the schedule of classes already, that means these are optional, right? And so it's nice if we all could to send out a poll to see when most folks can join your optional virtual office hours, if you will, or these Zoom meetings. Now, speaking of virtual office hours, we go into BEOI, we're designing a fully online course, right? So when students are in an online course, we are now mandated to provide um, scheduled virtual office hours, which means that it's on the homepage, it's in the syllabus, it's in the announcements. And that way students can prepare for those office hours. If you have why? Because you might have a student down in LA, right? If this is an online class. So having office hours that are in the brick and mortar classroom or your office might not help those students. They're far away. Sometimes they leave, they work and they leave the country, but they're still enrolled in your class, right? And so we need to do that. The other thing is that if they're scheduled, a student upon receiving the welcome letter as pre-course contact or your syllabus or seeing it on the homepage might say, oops, I can't make the Wednesday 8 a.m. meetings. I'm going to reach out to my professor to see if I can schedule something. Sometimes we can't, right? But sometimes we can. And this is inspired by Moreno Valley College's RSI work. All right, what else do we have here? Design tricks. Start with low stakes to show them what they want. Add clear examples of good work. Introduce them to different media like images, video, sound. Share links. Vary the type of activities they complete just so that they don't become monotonous to the student. Not every discussion board needs to do the same thing. Meaning it doesn't all have to be just question and answer. You can ask them to be creative. You can ask them to brainstorm. It's really up to you. I mean, sometimes I ask them to participate in Padlet, which is like a discussion board. Where have you called home? And it's to break up a little bit of the monotony. And then that way they can come in and then just share where they've visited or where they've called home. And that opens up just a lot of discussion for diversity. Also, wow, a lot of us come from the Bay Area. Like many of us have never left. So that is also a conversation. We also can include leveled up, which allows for video replies. So if you find that you have very savvy students, and let's say that you're in a communication media or a speech class, and you might want them to create their own videos to share, that is also something you can do. The reason that takes a little bit more time and skill, and we call it level up, is that although most students now are very savvy with video recording, not all are. And so that's why we would have to provide what I call just-in-time resources. And these would be how to, right? How to create a Canvas Studio video. If you do want your students to use video uploads for whatever reason, assignments or discussions, then do enable the Canvas Studio in your settings in the navigation tab so that they also have access to that right within your course. And try different tools. A lot of the professional development will say, hey, we're going to try to use Hypothesis, or we'll try to learn how to use Padlet. Pardon me. And so you can try to use some of these different tools and see if the students like them or how they respond to that. Right now, I'm testing out something that's called Humanize. So it's like a discussion, it's involved, it takes training. But one of my colleges is going to pay for it, and so I will try to learn it. All right, choose one and mix it up. So, unique contributors, students bring their own research expertise, knowledge, observations that connect. So, for my students, I do ask them to pick or find their own topic within the module, the content that we're looking at, the topics that we're looking at, and also to find their own sources. So that does help because it gives them a little bit of agency. Students can be helpers if you want. You can ask specific students or ask students to volunteer, to curate a list of something, right? Or to put together an infographic. Outside in, students go outside and find something that connects them back to the subject and topic, such as in math in structures, for example. They can go to zoos, they can record, they can take photographs, they can upload images. They might observe a protest from a distance. So there are different little things that they can do. Inside out, students may look at things within our course and then connect that to what they find outside. All about me, students can document or connect with a topic to their own life. I mentioned where I have called home, where they put a pin on a map and say, this is where I called home for 5 years of my life or 10 years or whatever it is. Reflectors, we can have students reflect on the learning, self-assessments before an exam. I create discussions, and part of the weekly discussions ask them for a bit of self-assessment to share with everybody else. So they might talk about what was the toughest thing to try to understand, or they might talk. Sometimes they include my whole family had COVID this week, and so and that's a self-assessment. I wasn't able to concentrate on my work because I was caring for my family. Mixed media also, we do encourage students to test out new things. You'd be amazed at at the skill they have in creativity. I have one assignment that's a Pixton assignment, and I asked them to create their own three-panel political comic. And so and I give them, of course, criteria. It needs to be at least two people. There has to be a dialogue in three panels, right? But what later on I tell them teaches them how to have an introduction, kind of the core concept or body of the work, and then have a conclusion. So there are different things that we can do. Pro tip is to slow down and spell it out. You've probably noticed that I run through these slides very quickly. And so one of the things that I have to remember when I'm giving feedback is to try to be clear. I tend to be verbose. You've probably already noticed in the feedback, it's like a lot. All right. A part of that is I don't want to miss anything. But it's always good. Some folks, not too many of you, but some have said, oh, that was like a lot. And so I'm like, okay, let me try to pare that back down so it's not so overwhelming. And then also steps. So this is one of the things I learned is to not put a thing in paragraph if it can be a list, just or a bullet like this, because it's just very clear to say first do this, then do that. So I also try to do that. And then of course we support our students where they need us, right? So we try to meet them where they need us. I'm going to encourage you to go into the module that contains the recordings and to look at this PowerPoint because it is very involved, right? And like for me right now, I would probably have to zoom in, but because I'm in Zoom, I can't zoom into this slide to show you all of this that you have here. But in essence, it is saying to demystify the textbook access and content. So what does that mean if you're using publisher content, or it could be also Zero Textbook ZTC or OpenStax? Try to embed the content right within the pages instead of having a link that links them outside of Canvas. So I hope that that helps. Three keys to objectives: objectives versus outcomes, objectives learning focused, SLO based, and students will be able to. Outcomes are the product, the project the student will share and learn. I often think of this as a sandwich, right? So I think of it as we give them the objectives, right? Then we give them the learning content, and then we measure those objectives with the outcomes. And the outcomes are the assessment outcomes. So it means that the objectives have to, and also this is going to be Bloom's taxonomy, right? Need to be measurable. So we try to put that verb, that action verb, at the front of each objective. So we will say, for example, students will learn how to, and then we'll say diagram, whatever it is, or create a list of activities for children, or analyze newspaper articles, compare different political parties. So, whatever it is, we try to make sure that those strong verbs, action verbs, are right at the top, at the front of each objective. Okay, let's see what else. Clarity of objectives. I mentioned the Bloom's taxonomy. So before the learning starts, previewing the learning, clear and consistent, engaging, detailed instructions, multiple points of entry. Unit objectives are written in language that is student-centered, right? And so we want to make sure that we're very clear with what we are saying, and we'll use those. Develop a draft of essay. Recognize that preparing your draft is a process. Appraise and revise your draft of essay 3, for example. So note how it says by the end of the week you will be able to, and then it lists them with those action verbs right at the front of each objective. All right, alignment of objectives. So I mentioned sort of my visual for myself of that sandwich, right? The objective, the learning content in the middle, and then we wrap up with that measurable outcome. And we measure outcomes by using assessments. In Canvas, we really have the 3 Canvas assessments: assignments, which are student to teacher. You can have peer reviews on that if you want. That brings in another RSI element. Discussions, for the most part, those are going to be the entire class with the teacher instructor, or it might be small groups. So you'll notice later on that instead of you're replying to everybody, you will only have a smaller group to reply to. So it makes it less of a cognitive overload to read all of, everybody's posts and double replies, right? Peer replies. And then we have quizzes. My huge tip is that if you're going to use a quiz, just go ahead and make it open book, open notes. Do you have to tell them right at the forefront in the instructions, use your notes, use your book? You can. You can. I typically don't tell them until their second attempt. And what I do encourage them to do is to try to take the quiz the first time just on their own after going through the learning content. Then take the second attempt with their notes, and then take the third attempt with notes and book. Um, and so students, in my course at least, these quizzes are not heavily weighted. They're like rewarding them for homework. And it's really to get them to be exposed to the chapters and exposed to the vocabulary, the topics, and the themes within our weekly module, right? The heavily weight is where I ask them to write, right? And to research, cite their sources. So that those are worth 100 points. Those essays are worth 100 points in a heavily weighted assignment group, whereas the quizzes are not. They're not heavily weighted. If they miss a quiz, it's not going to, it doesn't even hurt their grade. Not unless they're on the cusp between grades. So that's my huge recommendation. Make it true, false, multiple choice. Do shuffle the answers. If you don't shuffle the answers on a quiz, the first answer is always the right answer. So that's just a pro tip for you there. And let Canvas do its work. Canvas will take care of the quizzes. You can provide feedback within the quiz answers so that you can focus on individualized feedback for other things that are heavily weighted. What other things? So if you want to have like short answer or essays within the quizzes, consider maybe pulling those out of the quiz and instead placing them in an assignment, right? So that students can go ahead and send in their short answers or their essays. And that way you can focus on grading those on an individual basis. And then you can let Canvas do its thing with the quizzes. That way, for me, when I notice that too many students got an answer wrong or failed a quiz, then I have to go in and check because that means that I did something wrong when I created that quiz. But now for years, the quizzes, they pretty much run themselves, right? Even with the positive feedback already embedded in there. And then when I go through the speed grader, I can just give them a bit of kudos, like, "Hey, great job. You've got 10 out of 10 on the first try." So things like that to encourage them. All right. Let's see here. Oh, assignment work through. So we'll pop into our course to take a look at that. And just next steps again. So Wednesday, January 15th, make sure your peer replies are in for that introductory orientation module. Make sure that you have that you've completed the creating instructor presence quiz and the midterm. And also by Sunday, January 19th, you will have your initial post to sharing student-to-student interaction activity so we can learn from each other and building your learning content module. So you're going to have to create your learning objectives and outcomes. And again, think about that. What content are you going to provide, and how are you going to measure those learning objectives and outcomes? And so let me get out of there and jump into our course as promised. You'll notice the two recent announcements will be at the top. Here's my to-do lists, ever growing. I was down to 14 here, and since I started this video, these have come in, which is great, So I'm really appreciative of you all for submitting your work before the due dates. That has really helped me. But no worries, if you're a little bit past the due date, you'll find that the assignments are open. They do close eventually, so just keep that in mind. They're not open indefinitely. All right, let's take a look then. We're going to jump into the modules. Notice also how we have the modules kind of at the top of the course navigation menu. The reason for that is the modules are or is the tab that is used the most for students, and it is used to navigate the course, right? That's why we close out. You notice here we closed out discussions and assignments because everything is presented within the module that they need. That way, they don't have a clutter of things here in their navigation. You should have already gone through all of the course orientation and introductions and have your green check marks on the side. Again, note that as I close these up, that you can only open new modules when you have completed everything within the current module. So again, module 3 is opening tomorrow morning, but you will only be able to access it if you have everything here already done. That means that you have completed your introductory orientation module and you have shared your introductory um, orientation module with your peers. You'll notice also a couple of things here. Contribute. This icon with the two little dialog boxes, those are always going to be discussions. The icons with the little pencil, that's an assignment. Icons that have a little page without the pencil, those are pages. Later on, when you start to add pages, learning content to your own modules, keep in mind that when you click on the plus button on the right-hand corner, that the default is assignment for the most part. So you do need to pull down on that menu, that downward caret, and select page if you're going to create a page. I would not label anything reading assignment if it's on a content page, right? Instead of labeling something reading assignment, which can be confusing to students, label that page or title that page required reading. And that way, within it, you can tell them, uh, within this module, you will find an assignment based on this reading. And so that really is the reading assignment, right? And then later on, you go ahead and you create an assignment by selecting assignment, creating assignment, and then telling giving students instructions, and then giving them the rubric for that. But we'll probably get to that in a bit. Again, please read all of the content, right? All of this content really does help. I know that we're pressed for time, so sometimes we kind of just want to skip the content and just get to the assignment. And I totally understand that. That's exactly what our students do. The only thing is that then sometimes they missed out on something that was very key and important, right? And if they missed out on that, then they the assignment's not going to be uh, really as fine detailed and complete as it should be. For example, I still get understand and learn as learning objectives. And so if my students or colleagues had read this page, they wouldn't include this as a mistake anymore because they would have already remembered it. Um, so what am I saying? I'm not trying to chastise or anything. I'm just saying that I do understand that it's a lot of reading here and that we have the natural tendency to skip that. Um, but if you do, you can always go back. If you're like, oh my goodness, what does that mean? You can go back and review Bloom's taxonomy if you want. The other thing is that for discussions, we do have a rubric that can help. And so if you click on the three buttons there and you show rubric, it will show you what is expected from each discussion. And we do want substantive posts and substantive replies. And in this course, it's 2 replies. Then when you have your building your learning content module, you have information here. I mentioned curated and created content. You can include all of that. You will learn how to add a module, how to create an assignment, how to create a page, right? So if you can please pay attention to that when you're creating a page. A page only has content. It for now at least, because we're not using special tools, it doesn't have students submit anything, right? Later on when we use additional tools, and it does. Also, you need to publish your module, right? Here's a walkthrough video. I hugely recommend going through that. How to submit your assignment, where to find your feedback. And then here's another one on submitting the URL in Canvas. And scroll to the bottom because there you will find the rubric. And the rubric will tell you how to create these page titles in order, the module introductory page, the objectives and outcomes page. So please take a look at these. You will notice that the whole objectives and outcomes, it takes up like 3 criteria rubric, from the rubric 3 criteria. So we do consider it to be very important. Curated learning, created learning, publisher content, how that should be embedded within the course itself. The discussion, right? The assignment, the quiz, the module, which is the wrap up. Think of the objectives and overviews, the objectives and outcome, and then the conclusion as being like bookends for learning content and assessments that happen within the module. All right, so I think that I covered that all. As soon as its recording is processed, I will go ahead and place it right within the module so you can review. It does take me a while to create the captions because I have to manually go through and, I used words like Prezi that apparently YouTube doesn't like to caption. If you're going to create your own videos, which we do recommend, and actually is required, I think, of one of these assignments, use Zoom if you want to have a background, right? If you don't care whether you have a background or not, Studio is far easier to use, right? Because the captions are a little bit more crisp. and it will save you a lot of time. Right? I will stop share here. And I think this was a little bit longer than I had hoped, but I hope you find it helpful. And please use Canvas Inbox to reach out if you have any questions. Okay, bye. Have a good day.